Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Free Legal Advice Show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host Ilyas Bulbulia and I'll be with you for the next hour. As our regular viewers are aware, the Free Legal Advice Show provides you, our viewers, the opportunity to call in and ask us any questions that you have on any aspect of English law. On this show, I should be able to cover a vast, diverse range of matters ranging from immigration law matters, family law matters, criminal law matters. So whatever your legal questions are, please feel free to get in touch with us. We get loads of questions on immigration law matters, which is fantastic. But as I've just explained, even if your queries relate to other matters, family law matters, property law matters, please do feel free to get in touch on the numbers that appear at the bottom of the screen. Two ways you can get in touch with us. Landline number, if you want to speak to me live on air, you can call on the landline number which appears at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, there is a mobile number there, so you can send any messages through on that mobile number. I will receive your messages here and I will be able to address your queries that you've sent in on WhatsApp or by text message. Couple of minor points before we get going. Obviously, on a live show, it's not possible to take very detailed information from callers who call in. And sometimes I need to look at documents before I can advise you properly. Now, if it's the case that your matter is quite complex and I need to have a thorough discussion with you, or it's the case that I do need to look at documents before I can advise you, then I will ask you to leave your number with the control room and I will give you a ring off air. I'll have that more thorough discussion with you later on. I'll look at your documents and then advise you properly. Again, it's part of the Free Legal Advice Show, so whatever advice that I provide off air, following a more thorough discussion with you, it is completely free of charge and it's part of the Free Legal Advice Show. As I've said, two ways to get in touch. Landline number, if you want to speak to me live on air, 01924 231 083, or alternatively, as always, you can send in your messages on the WhatsApp number. Now, just before we came live on air, we had a number of questions coming in. So let's look at some of the questions that have come in already. The first question that's come in relates to immigration law. And I do apologize, before I can go into that question, we have a caller who wants to speak to us live on air. So let's go to our first call for the day. Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Hello, assalamu alaikum. Sir, I've got a couple of questions regarding the nationality my brother is applying for. So what it is that he has completed the application online, and there are a couple of questions which we are not sure how to answer that.
Okay.
So the first one is actually they're asking, have you made any previous UK immigration application in the UK or abroad?
Yeah.
So his history is that he came as a student in 2007 and went back to Pakistan in 2012.
Okay.
And then he got married, and then in 2013 he got married and to a British citizen and came back.
Okay.
So when we are adding the information about his previous UK immigration application, do we need to mention his student application along with his spouse visa? Is that we need to fill in?
Okay.
That's my
better, in my view, it's better to mention all the applications. It's always safer doing that. Having said that, if you miss an application off, they are not going to reject your application because you failed to mention a particular application. But if you're aware of the applications that you've made, then do include details of those applications. But an omission won't be fatal. But you know that a previous student application was made, then your brother come later on a different visa. You have the information. You might as well include
the
that.
only thing is we don't have details of exact details of the application and the dates and things like that. So we can just mention.
It's not a problem. You can put an approximate date in. If you want, when you submit the application online, if it's been done online, you can include a note or a letter explaining that some of the information you've provided approximate dates for because you can't recall now, or you don't have that information to hand. Absolutely not a problem at all doing that. It's not the case you've missed an application or you've got a date wrong and therefore the application is going to be refused. That's not the case.
Nice. Nice. And then in terms of like the note you're mentioning, is it like in the online application, there's at the end of the application, does
No,
that come in the
on a nationality form, there is no section to add a note. So what you should do is, when you're required to upload certain documents, for example, a copy of your passport, the English certificate, etc. So when you're uploading those documents, you can upload a letter as well, explaining your application. So the sections under which you upload your documents, find the most appropriate section and include your letter in there saying, look, I wasn't sure about this, or if you want to clarify something, you can do that. But look, it's not fatal to not be aware of certain dates and certain applications.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. And this, just a quick question, the second one and the last one is they're asking about his employment details. So again, the same thing that he's doing two jobs. One is the main job where, when you go to the application form, it gives you location to add details. So he's done that, but it doesn't give him position like space to add the second job as a current job. So I believe we would do the same, that we add a note and you upload it and additional, giving them additional information. I think that probably the first answer you've given me.
Yeah, you could do that. There's not a problem. Second way of doing it, and I don't know because I don't, the other way of doing it would be, instead of adding it as a current job, you add it as an old job, but put the dates in there which match the current dates. That may work on an online form. I'm not 100% sure. But if that doesn't work, add a note in there, say, look, this is the other job that I am currently doing as well. Don't worry about it too much. I mean, as far as employment history for 10 years is concerned, most people aren't sure.
Just the last bit about the employment. So again, as I mentioned, that he came as a student and stayed in UK till 2012. So in that period as well, he was working for a bank, and then he went back and came back on a spouse visa. So do we need to mention the employment?
You should mention that. From my recollection, they ask for the employment history for the last 10 years.
Absolutely,
so whatever falls within the last 10 years, you should mention. Definitely mention.
Fair enough. That's absolutely fine. Thank you so very much for explaining all that in detail, and I really appreciate it.
No problem at all. You're very welcome. Thank you very much for your call.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. Let's take our next call. Hello, assalamu alaikum.
वालेकुम सलाम अस्सलाम वालेकुम इलियास भाई
जी वालेकुम सलाम जी भाई
इलियास भाई मेरा एक क्वेश्चन है कि वाइफ पाकिस्तान से मंगवानी हो तो कितनी इनकम होनी चाहिए
जी
तो क्या उसको इंग्लिश टेस्ट उधर पाकिस्तान देना होगा या नहीं और क्या कि कितने वो आ जाए तो कितने अरसे के बाद वो परमानेंट उसका वीजा लग सकता है?
तो जो आपके काम के बारे में आपने जो पूछा ने, तो आप अभी एम्प्लॉयड है, सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयड है, आपका सिचुएशन क्या है अभी?
लेकिन मैं काम नहीं करता, क्या कि दूसरे आदमी का काम शो कर सकता है या नहीं?
ऑलराइट, ओके। सो आप खुद काम नहीं कर रहे हैं?
नहीं।
आपको कोई बेनिफिट्स मिल रही है? क्या मिल रहा है अभी?
यस
जी, ऑलराइट, ओके। कोई डिसेबिलिटी बेनिफिट्स ऐसा कुछ मिल रहा है आपको?
नहीं।
ऐसा कुछ नहीं है जी, ठीक है, ऑलराइट, ओके। और ठीक है, और वाइफ ने इंग्लिश का टेस्ट अभी पास नहीं किया है, वो करने वाली है वाइफ?
या वो पाकिस्तान में इंग्लिश टेस्ट जरूरी है?
जी, ऑलराइट, ओके। जो पहला प्लस आपका सवाल था ना, जो इनकम के बारे में, असल में प्रॉब्लम ये है ना कि आप जनरली किसी और की इनकम नहीं बता सकते। सो आप ये नहीं कर सकते कि लोग मैं काम नहीं कर रहा हूँ और तो मैं मेरा भाई की इनकम बता दूंगा, मेरा कोई फ्रेंड की इनकम बता दूंगा। उसको जो थर्ड पार्टी सपोर्ट है, जनरली वो थर्ड पार्टी सपोर्ट को एक्सेप्ट नहीं करते। रूल्स में है कि एक्सेप्शनल सर्कमस्टांसेस में वो एक्सेप्ट कर सकते हैं, मगर इन प्रैक्टिस रियलिटी ये है कि थर्ड पार्टी सपोर्ट वो एक्सेप्ट नहीं करेंगे। सो जनरली स्पीकिंग स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट ये है कि इनकम होनी चाहिए 18,600 पाउंड की एक साल की। सो अगर आप एम्प्लॉयड है तो 6 मंथ्स का जॉब जनरली बताना पड़ता है। मगर ये जो इनकम का जो इश्यू है ना, वैसे काफ़ी कॉम्प्लेक्स है, क्योंकि कोई बंदा एम्प्लॉयड हो सकता है, कोई सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयड है, कोई किसी के पास कोई रेंटल इनकम है, किसी के पास सेविंग्स है। सो बहुत डिफरेंट वेज से ये इनकम का जो रिक्वायरमेंट है उसको सेटिस्फाई कर सकते हैं। सो थोड़ा सा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है, मगर जनरल स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट ये है कि इनकम बतानी पड़ेगी आपको। और आप फैमिली मेंबर की इनकम पे जनरली स्पीकिंग रिलाई नहीं कर सकते। सो ये एक मसला होगा जो आपको सॉर्ट आउट करना पड़ेगा, मगर डिफरेंट वेज है इसमें ये सॉर्ट आउट करने में। सो इसके बारे में आपको थोड़ा सा एडवाइस प्रॉपर लेना चाहिए
तो इंग्लिश टेस्ट जो है वो ज़रूरी है पाकिस्तान में करना?
इंग्लिश टेस्ट वैसे ज़रूरी है, वो उसका जो लेवल है A1 कहते हैं, बहुत लो लेवल की इंग्लिश टेस्ट है और वो करना पड़ता है। इसमें थोड़े से एक्सेप्शंस होते हैं, जिसकी उम्र है ओवर 65 ईयर्स ओल्ड, या तो कोई मेंटल बीमारी है इसलिए, मेंटल इलनेस है इसलिए वो पास नहीं कर सकते। सो लिमिटेड एक्सेप्शंस है, मगर जनरली पास करना ही पड़ता है। सो अगर वाइफ का इंग्लिश अगर ठीक नहीं है तो फिर आप वाइफ को कहो कि वो जो कोर्सेज होता है, जो क्लासेस में जाते हैं, वो शुरू कर दे अभी।
ओके
जी। और आई थिंक आपका लास्ट जो क्वेश्चन था ना, वो ये था कि कितना टाइम के बाद परमानेंट मिलता है, आई थिंक वो पूछ रहे थे ना? जी जी जी। तो भाई अभी जो नई सिस्टम है वो अभी काफ़ी साल से अभी चल रही है। ये है कि आपको जो वीज़ा मिलता है वो 2.5 ईयर्स का वो वीज़ा इनिशियली देते हैं। सो स्टार्टिंग में उसको वीज़ा देंगे 2.5 ईयर्स के लिए। 2.5 ईयर्स के बाद उसको एक्सटेंड करना पड़ेगा और वो दोबारा 2.5 ईयर्स के लिए वीज़ा देंगे। सो एक 2.5 हो गया, एक्सटेंशन आ गई, दोबारा 2.5 ईयर्स की वीज़ा उसने दिया, होम ऑफिस ने। 5 साल के बाद इंडेफिनेट लीव के लिए अप्लाई कर सकते हैं। सो टोटल 5 ईयर्स के बाद इंडेफिनेट लीव के लिए अप्लाई कर सकते हैं। सो काफ़ी लॉन्ग प्रोसेस है, लॉन्ग प्रोसेस है। But thank you भाई आपका कॉल के लिए, very interesting call.
Thank you very much.
Jazakallah. Thank you very much indeed. So that was a question relating to a spouse application. 3 strands to the question related to initially question related to the financial requirement, whether third-party support was permissible or not. If you're not working, can you rely on third-party support to meet the financial requirement? Second question was relating to the English test, and the third question related to the length of the visa. When can the wife, when she's in the UK, apply for indefinite leave to remain? Shortly, we're going to be taking a break. When we come back from our break, for the benefit of our viewers who can't understand Urdu, I will go through the question and the answers in greater detail. We're taking a short break. We'll be back in the next couple of minutes. See you then. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the free legal advice show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host Ilyas Bulbulia. To speak to me live on air, you can ring on the landline number which appears at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, as always, you can send a message on the mobile number which appears at the bottom of the screen as well. Just before the break, we had a caller who'd called in and asked us questions about his wife's spouse application. 3 questions he posed to us. First of all, relating to the financial requirement when you want to sponsor a partner to come to the UK. In this particular case, he wanted to sponsor his wife to come to the UK, and he was asking about the financial requirement. Specifically, he was asking about whether, because he's not working, whether he could rely on third-party support, the support of a family member, the financial support of a friend. And what I explained to our caller was that, generally speaking, that would not be permissible. He would need to meet the financial requirement himself. There are various ways in which the financial requirement can be met when you're sponsoring a partner to come to the UK. It could be employment income, it could be self-employment income, it could be rental income, it could be savings, or the wife who's abroad may have savings of her own. So there are different ways in which the financial requirement could be met. But generally speaking, what would not be permissible would be to rely on third-party support. There are exceptional circumstances in which third-party support is permitted. But in my experience, it's very difficult to demonstrate that you fall within that exceptional category. The difficulty that I find with the situation where somebody's trying to rely on third-party support is that the likelihood is that the Home Office will reject an application based on third-party support. And then you will have the right of appeal, you'll have to submit an appeal, and then the judge ultimately here in the UK will determine whether you meet the immigration rules. all well and good. The problem is the time it takes for this to be sorted out. You're looking at approximately a year before this matter is resolved by the court. So my advice to clients always is that, look, as far as the financial requirement is concerned, try and meet the requirements in the normal way. Try not to rely on third-party support. That was the first question. Second question related to the English language requirement. And what our caller was asking was in relation to the requirement. And I explained that the requirement is that when you're sponsoring a partner to come to the UK, your partner needs to pass an English test. And the English test is tested at a level which is referred to as A1 level, the most basic test in English that you have. There are exceptions to that. For example, somebody who is over the age of 65 would not need to pass an English test. Somebody who has a mental illness, disability may be exempt depending on what their medical evidence says. Somebody who's done a degree already might be able to rely on their degree qualification. There's additional requirements which need to be fulfilled if you want to do that. And lastly, depending on your partner's nationality, you may be exempt. For example, if you're sponsoring a partner who lives in USA, for example, then it's a majority English speaking country, they would be exempt. So there are some exceptions, there are some ways around it, but in practice, in most cases, you have to satisfy the English language requirement by submitting the required English certificate, which is generally speaking the A1 life skills test. Now, somebody who doesn't have even a basic understanding of English would normally have to attend English classes. Now, in my experience, obviously this depends on the person's ability, whoever's trying to pass the test, but in my experience, somebody who's got no knowledge of English, it could take them 2 to 3 months of attending classes to get to a stage where they are able to pass the A1 test. So it is, I mean, even if somebody doesn't understand a bit of English, it is possible to get to the required level within 2 to 3 months. And that's my experience in terms of other clients who've had to get their partners through the English test. That's the kind of time frame that most people have mentioned, that within 2 to 3 months you can get up to speed and certainly up to the required level. Last question that our caller raised was in relation to the duration of a spouse visa and as to when the spouse who's come over to the UK, when the spouse would qualify for indefinite leave to remain. And I explained to our viewer that the way it works is that initially, where you've got married and applied for a visa, initially your partner would be granted a 2.5-year visa. It's actually 2 years and 9 months, but generally speaking, the first 3 months is to give you time to come to the UK. So that's the initial grant. Before that comes to an end, you have to apply to extend your visa. And then once you've extended your visa, you would get another 2.5-year visa, which takes you to around the 5-year mark. So as when your partner has lived in the UK for 5 years, she becomes eligible to apply for indefinite leave to remain, permanent stay in the United Kingdom. So the way the system now works is that the initial visa is for 2.5 years. There's an extension stage at the 2.5-year mark. If you successfully apply for the extension, you meet all the requirements, you stay on the 5-year route, you get another 2.5-year visa. And then after having completed a total of 5 years in the United Kingdom, your partner would qualify for indefinite leave to remain. Now, if there are problems whilst at the extension stage, problems in the sense that the requirements can't be properly met, it could be because the financial requirement, which has to be met, in the same way that when you're applying for a visa, you meet a financial requirement, you generally show an income of £18,600 per annum. You have a similar requirement at the extension stage. Let's say there's a problem and the financial requirement can't be met. then you might still be eligible for an extension. But the difficulty is that the Home Office can, at that stage, place you onto the 10-year route to settlement. So that's really what you need to be aware of, that you've got the visa, and it's a spouse visa. It's for 2.5 years. But there are some other hurdles that you will need to get over at the extension stage and also at the indefinite leave to remain stage. And at any stage, if there are problems in meeting the financial requirement because somebody's lost their job or because the income's dropped, that could cause a problem. Generally speaking, if you have children, then the Home Office will, despite the fact that the requirements aren't met properly, the Home Office will grant an extension based on the children. In my experience, the difficulty arises where there are no children from the relationship and the requirements at the extension stage can't be met. So, for example, the £18,600 requirement can't be met. There isn't enough income and there are no children. That can potentially be problematic because the Home Office could say at that stage that, look, you're not going to be granted an extension because you don't meet the requirements and you don't fall within any exceptions because there are no children. So it could result in a refusal and the partner having to go back and to reapply from their own home country. So it could be problematic. So the point I was making to our caller who called in inquiring about the length of time it takes to get indefinite leave is that it is sort of a 2-3 stage process. Initially, the partner gets a visa to come to the UK, you extend your visa at the 2.5-year mark, and you apply for indefinite leave after 5 years in the United Kingdom. Requirements have to be met throughout the 5-year period. So I hope that answers the question, and for the benefit of our viewers who weren't able to follow the questions and answers in Urdu, hopefully that now explains the position in English. Okay, let's take the next call for the day. Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Hello.
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 Hello, assalamu alaikum. Ji bhai, you're live on air.
Walaikum assalam.
Ji bhai, what's your question? Brother, you're live on air. I can hear you. So what's your question, brother?
मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि मुझे पेंशन नहीं मिल रही.
Okay, all right.
पेंशन.
Okay, ठीक है. ठीक है. तो आपने वो स्टेट पेंशन के लिए अप्लाई किया है या कंपनी पेंशन के लिए अप्लाई?
67 का मैं हो गया हूँ. 65 पे मुझे रिटायर किया था उन्होंने.
काम से रिटायर किया गया ना? वो आप काम पहले करते थे, तो वो आपकी काम की भी पेंशन थी या नहीं थी?
जी.
आप जब काम करते थे तो आपने जो वो एम्प्लॉयमेंट जो आप जो जॉब कर रहे थे?
जी, मैं अपना काम करता था.
जी जी, आपने जो जॉब किया है यूके में आपने? सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयड थे. जी ठीक है. ओके, ऑलराइट, ठीक है. और आपने वो स्टेट पेंशन के लिए अप्लाई किया?
स्टेट पेंशन के लिए?
हाँ, सो गवर्नमेंट जो पेंशन देते हैं तो आपने,
वो कहते हैं तेरी वाइफ की उम्र कम है.
आपकी वाइफ की उम्र कम है. जी ठीक है. तो उसने क्या कहा है कि आपको कब मिलेगा?
मिलेगा ही नहीं, जब वाइफ की उम्र होगी तो फिर मिलेगा.
ऑलराइट, ओके. तो अभी आपको क्या दे रहे हैं? वो यूनिवर्सल क्रेडिट देते हैं क्या?
नहीं, मुझे तो कुछ नहीं दे.
कुछ नहीं है. तो भाई ये जो बेनिफिट का मसला है ना, बेस्ट आपके लिए मैं आपको एडवाइस देता हूँ कि आप सिटीजन्स एडवाइस ब्यूरो से बात करो उसके बारे में. सिटीजन्स एडवाइस ब्यूरो.
वो नहीं सुनते.
जी, वो नहीं सुन रहे आपकी. आपने लॉ सेंटर से बात की?
किसे?
लॉ सेंटर. जी. सो आप जो एरिया में रहते हैं ना, जहां भी आप रहते हैं, वहां सिटीजन्स एडवाइस ब्यूरो होगा या तो लॉ.
वो कहते हैं हम कुछ नहीं कर सकते.
राइट. अगर सिटीजन्स एडवाइस ब्यूरो कुछ नहीं कर सकते तो आप लॉ सेंटर वाले से बात करो. ये प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि लॉ सेंटर होता है, आप किसी को पूछो. अगर वहां भी आपको हेल्प नहीं मिल सकती तो आप जो लोकल एमपी की ऑफिस है ना, मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट की ऑफिस, वहां जाओ और उसको कहो कि कोई एजेंसी हमको बताओ, सिटीजन्स एडवाइस ब्यूरो, लॉ सेंटर, कोई और जगह जहां आप जा सकते हैं एडवाइस के लिए.
किधर है लॉ सेंटर? किधर है?
वो आप आपकी MP से बात करो, ठीक है?
ठीक है।
ठीक है, okay, jazakallah, आपके कॉल के लिए. Normally, for benefits advice, generally speaking, the best place to go for advice is either the Citizens Advice Bureau, the Law Centre. So these advisory bodies are normally best placed to advise on benefit issues and pension issues. Hope that answers the question. We're going to be taking a short break. We'll be back in the next couple of minutes. See you then. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Free Legal Advice Show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host Ilyas Bulbulia. To speak to me live in relation to any legal matters, please feel free to ring on the landline number which appears at the bottom of the screen, 01924 231 083. As always, you can send me a WhatsApp message with your legal question. I will receive your question here live in the studio and I will be able to answer your questions live on air. Speak to me live, you can ring on the landline number, but as always, you can continue to send in your messages on that mobile number, which is at the bottom of the screen as well. Right, let's look at the next question from a brother called Nizam, who sent the question in. Let me read the question out. It looks like it's a question regarding a visit visa. So brother says, Assalamu alaikum. In regards to a visa for my mum, she's been given a visa for 6 months from Bangladesh. This visa will run out in October. Due to Bangladesh being on the red list, she can't arrive here. What will happen to her visa once it expires and she's not been able to come on time? Right. Initially, when I was looking at the question, I thought mother was here in the United Kingdom. She's managed to travel to the United Kingdom from Bangladesh and she's actually got stuck here. That certainly was the case many months ago. People were here from India, Pakistan, and those countries were on the red list. They couldn't get a flight back. This is slightly different. So our viewer, Brother Nizam, is saying that mum in Bangladesh actually managed to get a visit visa to come to the United Kingdom. Visit visas are obviously valid for 6 months and it's due to expire in October. Obviously, mum's not been able to travel and it seems, I think, highly unlikely that mum would be able to travel to the United Kingdom. So our viewer, Brother Nizam, is asking what happens to that visit visa when it comes to an end. Unfortunately, when a visit visa comes to an end, it just does come to an end. There's nothing you can do about that. Now, there is a difference between other types of visa. For example, somebody who's got a spouse visa to come to the United Kingdom. So they've made the application's been successful, they've been given a spouse visa. Normally, when the visa sticker is placed in your passport, the visa sticker will be valid for 3 months. So you have to travel within 3 months. If you aren't able to travel, then for those type of visas, spouse visas, work visas, student visas, etc., you can go back to the Home Office and ask for a replacement visa to be placed in your passport again, so you're able to travel even after the first visa has expired. The problem is there is no such practice, there is no such procedure for visit visas. The Home Office's position is this: if you aren't able to travel during the duration of your visit visa, then if your visit visa comes to an end, you simply have to apply for a visit visa again. So you have to go through that whole process again. Couple of points I should mention. One is, if the country that you are applying from is, at the time you're applying, if the country is on the red list, then your visa application will not be processed at all. It will simply be put on hold. So what I would do is, for your mother, once it's obvious that mother isn't able to travel, best thing to do is get your application ready again, wait for Bangladesh to come off the red list, and then resubmit the application. Now, hopefully, it will be easier to get a visa this time round because mum has already been granted a visit visa. So, her circumstances were previously assessed and deemed to be okay. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been granted a visit visa. So hopefully this time round, the visit visa will be granted. But in terms of timing, you should wait until Bangladesh comes off the red list before you apply for a visit visa again. Hopefully, it won't be too difficult to get a visit visa this time. The other thing I would mention is this. I know I've said hopefully it won't be too difficult to get a visit visa again. But having said that, you should still make a proper full application. So I wouldn't take any chances with your mum's application. In the same way that initially you would have made a thorough, complete application, you would have addressed everything at the initial stage to be able to get successfully obtain a visit visa. I would do all that again. So do your homework again and try and complete a proper application. Deal with all the requirements properly in terms of mother's incomes, mother's assets, any other family members who are there, other travel, explaining previous travel history, etc. So do make another full application, but you're better off waiting until Bangladesh comes off the red list before you make that application. But in answer to your specific question, what happens, unfortunately, with a visit visa, once a visit visa comes to an end, it's not a visa which can be automatically extended. You simply have to apply for the visa again as if it's a completely new application. So hopefully that answers that question. Just another minor point regarding this. Where you're traveling from a country which is on the red list, then only those visa holders with certain visas can actually travel. As far as I'm aware, you wouldn't be able to travel if you've got a visit visa only. If you've got a longer term visa, like a student visa or a work visa or a spouse visa, then potentially you would be able to travel, but you may need to quarantine. We had a caller who was asking about a visit visa for his mum from Bangladesh. The visit visa had been granted. The visit visa is due to expire in October, but mum hasn't been able to travel from Bangladesh to the United Kingdom. And the brother was asking what happens to that visa. And I was explaining that once the visit visa comes to an end, it does actually come to an end. It's not automatically renewable. If caller's mother wants to come to the UK again, she would need to apply for another visitor visa afresh. Now, when I dealt with that question, another sort of point that came to mind, which may of benefit to our viewers, is this issue about countries which are on the red list. And red list is those countries from where, if you were to travel to the United Kingdom, you would have to quarantine in a hotel. So you wouldn't be able to come home and have your PCR tests done. It's absolutely mandatory. You would have to quarantine in a hotel. Now, just a couple of issues there. But in terms of who can travel from a red list country. Now, obviously, a British citizen is able to travel. Somebody with indefinite leave to remain is able to travel to the United Kingdom from a red list country. Obviously, they would have to quarantine in a hotel. So an issue that arises quite frequently is in relation to spouses who are coming from abroad, and they're coming from a country which is on the red list. So if I give you an example, Pakistan is still on the red list. So it may be the case that a spouse application has been made from Pakistan. You've waited many months for your husband or wife to get the visa. 3-4 months down the line, you get the good news that the application has been approved and the visa has been granted. Now, the starting point is this, that somebody with a spouse visa would be able to come to the United Kingdom. So they fall within the category of people that can travel to the United Kingdom. Somebody with a spouse visa, somebody with a work visa, etc. These are longer term visas. Those visa holders are able to travel to the United Kingdom. Now, The problem always is this, that once they come to the United Kingdom, they would have to quarantine in a hotel. The cost of that is in the region of £2,300. So it's quite expensive, and quarantine in a hotel is not something that people necessarily want to do. So the question that arises normally is, well, what can you do? Is there a way around it? Well, in my experience, there's only really two things you can do if you're not willing to travel. I think there are only two alternatives. One is you don't travel initially. You wait until the country comes off the red list. Now, if it happens that because you've waited so long, the duration within which you had to leave your home country, normally visas are granted for 3 months. I mean, you're meant to leave your home country within 3 months and start your residence in the United Kingdom. If you've not been able to leave your home country because your country is on the red list, you don't want to quarantine in a hotel, that's not a problem. You can ask for a replacement visa sticker to be placed in your passport. So you can wait, let the 3 month expire, and then apply for a replacement visa. The cost of that is in the region of about £350. So that is a possibility. A lot of people don't want to travel. So it may well be the case that they will basically sit it out. And if it's the case that the country doesn't come off the red list by the time the visa expires, then they will simply apply for a replacement visa sticker to be placed in their passport. So that's one alternative to traveling from a red list country where you've been granted a visa. Second alternative, which is more of a practical solution, is that if your country, for example, Pakistan, is on red list, then you don't travel directly from Pakistan to the United Kingdom. You go to another country which is not on the red list. So, for example, travel to the UAE, spend, I think, about 11 days there, and then after that, you then travel to the United Kingdom. So you're then able to demonstrate that you're not coming directly from a red list country. You might just want to check how long you need to stay in that country. My recollection is 10 or 11 days, but that may not be entirely accurate. But there is a way of avoiding the mandatory quarantine if you're from a red list country, and that is to spend 10 days, 11 days, 14 days, whatever the requirement is, in another country which is not on the red list. So that in practice is something that comes up regularly. But in relation to the visit visa that's been granted, and it's been granted to somebody who's from a country which is on the red list, you simply aren't able to travel from a red list country to the United Kingdom on a visit visa. So you can't even travel directly here and say, you know what, I'll quarantine in a hotel here. That's simply not possible. You wouldn't be able to board the flight because visit visas don't fall within the category of permitted, the class of permitted people who are able to travel. Normally, we'll be coming back in the next couple of minutes. I'll see you then. Welcome and welcome back to the Free Legal Advice Show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host, Ilyas Bulbulia. To speak to me live on air, you can ring on the landline number which appears at the bottom of the screen, 01924 231 083. And I can advise you in relation to any legal questions that you have live on air. Alternatively, the other very popular way of getting in touch is to send me a message on WhatsApp. At the number that you can do that on is the mobile number which appears at the bottom of the screen. It's people who already have a British passport, or they have indefinite leave to remain, or they've got some longer right to live in the United Kingdom. For example, they're a student, or they've got a spouse visa or a work visa. Hope that answers your question. Okay, we've had a number of questions coming in on WhatsApp. By all means, do please continue to send your questions in on that mobile number. Let's look at the next question that's come in. Again, it's an immigration question. Spouse visa question relating to somebody who is in the United Kingdom on a spouse visa, how long they can spend outside the UK without the spouse visa being affected. So that's the question. And specifically the question is, if I read the question out, my spouse arrived here on a spouse visa. However, she needs to return to her home country in order to complete her university course. How long can she stay outside the United Kingdom without her spouse visa being invalidated? Look, the reality is this, that in terms of the spouse visa, which is granted for 2.5 years, 2 years, 9 months, etc. If you spend a considerable time outside the UK, it doesn't mean that that spouse visa is going to be cancelled, that it's going to be invalid. It doesn't mean that. That spouse visa is going to remain as it is and will remain valid as it is up until the expiry date. So if it's granted for 2.5 years, it will remain valid for 2.5 years. After 2.5 years, it will need to be extended. The difficulty is this, that if your spouse spends a lot of time outside the UK, and we don't know how long your spouse needs to spend outside the UK in order to complete the university course. A couple of months would be okay, 3-4 months, but if it's a considerable time, then it may have an impact at the extension stage and certainly at the indefinite stage. Let's take our next call of the day. Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Ji walaikum salam. Thank you for calling.
My question is regarding bank statement.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep. Carry on, brother.
It's regarding my bank statement. What happened? I got appointment date for submitting my statement, like all documents and my biometric. Okay. So I got like last 3 months bank statement, which is printed in the branch of the bank. But others 3 months, I just printed out from my online apps. So I'm just asking the others 3 months, is there going to be any problem?
Okay.
So that is printed out from the bank website.
Yeah. So you know when you printed the 3 months bank statements from your app, can I just ask, which bank do you bank with? That might make it easier for me to...
Sorry?
Which bank do you bank with?
Lloyd's Bank.
Lloyd's Bank. So Lloyd's, when you print from the app, you can actually print proper bank statements on the Lloyd's app, can't you? So you know when you've printed the Lloyd's bank statements from your app, do they look like proper bank statements with the logo?
Yes, proper bank. It looks like proper bank.
Proper bank statements. Yeah, absolutely fine. So in practice, if you were to submit those statements, there'll be no issue because they look like proper bank statements. When you scan and upload...
One thing, like when I print out from my apps, it's proper statement, but my bank account is a joint account.
I understand.
But when I print it out from my apps, it comes as my name.
Okay.
And when I print it out from my wife's apps, it came with her name.
That's fine.
So, but first 3 months, I printed out from bank, and this came up with like joint name.
Okay.
So that's why I'm just asking,
that's not a problem because what will happen is the account number, the sort code, all that will be the same. I wouldn't worry. If you've printed off your bank statements from your app, I wouldn't worry too much. I would submit them as they are. Now, if the Home Office has any questions on that, and I doubt it very much that they will query this, but if the Home Office has any questions, they will just ask you and say, go to your bank and get the bank statement stamped or something like that. But nowadays, the general approach is, before you had to submit original bank statements, or if they weren't original, you had to get them stamped by the bank. The Home Office doesn't require that anymore in practice. And we frequently submit bank statements which have been downloaded from an app, and it's never queried. I understand the point you're making, that some of them will be in joint names, some of them will be in your single name. It won't be an issue. The Home Office is generally aware of all this, and in the end, they'll check the account number, they'll check the sort code. If they have any questions, they'll come back to you. But it won't, in my experience, it shouldn't be a problem at all.
And if both bank statements is showing my salary, like what that is coming, is match with my pay slip.
Absolutely. I mean, the other alternative is you print all of them off from the app and you submit your bank statements, which are then all similar. I mean, that's one option. You don't submit the ones from the bank. You submit the same ones, all printed off from the app. So then there won't be any issue there at all in terms of whether it's in a joint, whether the bank statement refers to both of you or refers to just one of you. That's one way of doing it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem at all. Thank you very much indeed. So just in relation to that, understand the concern that the brother has. But in practice, some things have got easier, some things have got better in terms of immigration and spouse applications. And generally speaking, what we found over the last couple of years, the Home Office is moving to a situation where they don't necessarily want to see originals. They're happy with scanned copies. They're happy with documents printed off apps to be uploaded. And the general position that the Home Office is taking is this, that if when they see these documents, if they have concerns, that if they think that something's not right, for example, they think that, the documents may have been tampered with, it may be that the font is different in certain places, it may be that the document's not properly aligned. If there's something that raises concerns, then or arouses suspicion, then what the Home Office will do at that stage is will contact the applicant, will contact you, and then ask you to submit additional evidence. But in my experience, in terms of bank statements, especially, or it could be wage slips, documents which have been emailed to us, documents which have been scanned to us, documents which we have downloaded from banking apps, they have all been accepted by the Home Office. Because the other thing you need to think about is the Home Office assesses things not just by looking at that document in isolation. They will look at your wage slips, they'll look at your employer's letter. If need be, they will check matters with HMRC. And it's only when things don't tally, there's something wrong, that they will make further inquiries. But, let's say, for example, you're working for a large employer, your salary slips look fine, and it's obvious that the money's coming into your bank account. They've done a HMRC check, and it's all come out well. They're not going to query anything. They're not going to say, well, you know what, the bank statement's from an app. We want to see original bank statements. In the round, it all looks fine. And in my experience, those kind of applications are printed approved, without further inquiry. Hope that answers that particular question. Now, just before we took that call, I was addressing the question in relation to somebody who is here on a spouse visa. So normally granted for 2.5 years. What level of absences is permitted? So how long can somebody be out of the country? And the particular question that we were addressing was in relation to somebody who needs to go back. They're on a spouse visa, they've joined their husband or wife, but they haven't finished their course. They need to go back to finish their course. Now, what happens? You can go back, you can finish your course. The problem is this, that if you spend too much time outside the UK, then you need to be aware of two things. One is at the extension stage, the Home Office might want to know, are you really together in a relationship when you're spending so much time apart? You then have to, do a bit more work, explain to the Home Office why you as the applicant, why you've spent so much time away from the UK and away from your partner, if that's the case. You might have to produce evidence that you wanted to finish your university course, so you might need to get a letter from the university confirming that, yes, you were doing this course and you attended the course, etc. You might be able to then submit your degree certificates, etc. Now, if you're able to explain it, then I think you would be granted an extension of your visa. So you've got over that hurdle. The second issue that would arise would be at the indefinite leave to remain stage. Normally you apply for indefinite leave to remain after 5 years in the United Kingdom. My concern is that what would happen is when the 5 years are completed and you, the applicant, you apply for indefinite leave to remain. If you've spent too much time outside the United Kingdom, the Home Office could turn around and say, you know what, you have had a visa for 5 years, but you've not lived in the UK for 5 years. So they may turn down your application for indefinite leave to remain. I've never had this in practice, but I've heard that this is the approach that the Home Office has taken in some cases, because in the vast majority of cases, when you get a spouse visa to come to the United Kingdom, you need to live with your partner. Your absences from the United Kingdom are normally limited, a month, 2 months, 3 months, a year, not beyond that. But if you spend too much time outside the UK, you might have to do a bit of explaining at the extension stage as to why you should still be granted an extension. And I think the difficulty might arise at the indefinite stage. They may say, you know what, you should get another extension. You don't qualify for indefinite leave because although you've had a 5-year visa, you haven't really spent 5 years in the United Kingdom. Hopefully that answers that question. In practice, most people do stay in the United Kingdom and that issue never actually arises. Unfortunately, that brings us close to the end of the show. We'll be back next week at the same time on Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Any questions that you have, please do get in touch with us then. Inshallah, see you next week. See you then.